Today's podcast is brought to you by Mountain Mule Transportation, located here in Bozeman, Montana. Mountain Mule is a private SUV and truck service, offering chauffeur services in all of southwest Montana. Whether it's your next skiing, hunting, or fishing trip, early morning or late night trips to and from Bozeman Airport, as well as weddings and private parties. No matter the occasion, Mountain Mule will get you there safely and on time. To learn more, visit mountain-mule.com and book today. Okay, good to go. Ready
Sweet.
whenever you guys are.
Let's do it. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Brennan.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. We usually typically start out with where you grew up, which we already know, but where you grew up, kind of what was your childhood like, and just kind of we just want to get to know you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born here in Bozeman in 2000. I'm 24 years old right now. I grew up in a working class family. My parents were both federal employees for the Park Service for the first probably half of my life. They both worked in Yellowstone. So I spent a lot of my early summers living in Yellowstone. And then I was back in town for the school year, And during the school year, my mom drove a school bus in Belgrade. And, before I actually started school when I was little, I would actually ride on her bus route with her because like a lot of people, she couldn't afford childcare, and especially not with a job driving bus. But so I grew up in Bozeman on West Oak, kind of across the street from the Days Inn. So that's kind of the area of town I grew up in. Nothing fancy, but could have been a lot worse, I went to Whittier Elementary School and Chief Joseph Middle School. And, to be honest, I was a shithead in school, to say the least. I mean, I was in trouble all the time. And I've been suspended more times than I can count. Just for, like skipping class, leaving school when I wasn't supposed to, things like that, nothing crazy. And then I went to Bozeman High School, of course. Same kind of deal there. I was in trouble a lot. I didn't want to go to class. I would have rather, hang out on the corner with my friends and kick the hacky sack around, instead of going to class. But around my senior year, I kind of shaped up and I did manage to graduate in 2019. And after that, I've been bouncing around a lot of different jobs. I worked at Town Pump at one point. I worked at Safe Light Auto Glass, changing windshields. Worked on a painting crew, and then now most recently I've been working at MSU as a custodian in the library for the past 2 years or so. And I just last year started a cleaning business called Northwestern Sparkle, and that's been great. This has been my first taste of not living paycheck to paycheck. So that's been awesome. And so my roots here in Bozeman are pretty deep, I know everybody knows me. And, I thought about moving out of Bozeman just because of the price of living here is out of control and the wages haven't kept up. But, I decided that before I decide to just bounce out of Bozeman, I should at least do something to try to change the situation, which is why I've decided to run for office now.
Cool.
If we back way up, what was it like growing up or spending summers in the park?
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, I feel very lucky that I got to do that. I got to see all kinds of wildlife, and I think it gave me a kind of deeper appreciation for public lands. And it also kind of changed my perception of what people call wilderness around here. Yellowstone is pretty remote and wilderness-like, but there's still the impact of human activity, of course. And so I guess I don't have the illusion anymore that our wild lands are truly untouched, and I think that was definitely shaped by my early years in the park.
You mean that like the park is really not that wild because there's human development in it?
Right. There's human development and there's human interaction with the wildlife. The fact that you can, approach a bison, be a couple feet away and probably not get gored. Of course we see sometimes people do, but there's certainly the human impact even in the most remote parts of Yellowstone.
I got you. Yeah, I guess so. That makes sense.
Yeah, everything's very domesticated there. Just because,
Right.
I mean, when there's humans around every day, and then you at a certain point you realize they're not a threat
Yeah,
because
exactly.
everything's protected. It's
yeah, and there's rules, right? Man-made, human-made rules that that don't apply in nature.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's also interesting because, like, of course, there's rules. It's a national park, and there needs to be some sort of order, right? Otherwise, you'd have a lot of people or you have potentially more people getting gored.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, interesting. Okay, so yeah, it makes sense because most people are like, oh, that's Yellowstone's so wild, and compared to the cities, it is, but compared to, I guess, maybe like raw, real nature, I guess it isn't.
I mean, yeah, compared to like if you just hiked miles and miles into the backcountry to a place where there's no roads, where there's no cars that can access it, it's totally different world out there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What did your folks do in the park?
They just worked maintenance, which is kind of a glorified janitor position. Drive around emptying trash cans, taking the power washer and hosing down outhouses and stuff. So nothing fancy, but it's like the ugly but necessary work that needs to be done in the park to keep it clean.
They were just there in the summertime?
Yeah, they were just seasonal workers.
Okay, yep.
My mom forever has been trying to land a permanent job in Yellowstone, but I mean it's quite difficult to get a permanent job in Yellowstone, especially recently with some of the cuts to spending from the federal government. But it sounds like she's actually on track to land a permanent job pretty soon, which is good.
Oh, cool.
I wonder, curious about that. Like, I guess I've never thought about that. And if you don't know, that's okay. But what makes it so hard to get a permanent job at Yellowstone? Like, is there just like tons of competition, or what's that?
Yeah, there's a lot of competition, and of course, since it's a federal job, they want people who have like a pristine resume, and I mean, and not to say that my mom doesn't. I mean, she's never had any discipline issues while working in the park or anything like that. But it's difficult to get a permanent job there because of the competition, especially when you start looking at jobs in like the ranger division or anything higher up than maintenance. And with the maintenance, they don't really need a large permanent force because in the off season, there's nobody there filling up the trash cans. But say it's a combination of reasons and funding. It seems like every few years there's changes to the budget for certain departments within the park.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Like it's kind of a volatile. It's a little bit volatile. It's not necessarily steady all the time.
Right.
Got it.
I'd imagine just the seasonality of the park too has a big impact on. I mean, I don't know what percentage of jobs are full time and what, but there's obviously a huge influx of seasonal workers for the winter season and the summer season and
I don't even know the percentage either, but there was a couple summers back when I was in high school still where I actually did live in the park in the off season. I mean, I stayed there till probably early November, and I mean there were not a tourist in sight, and the only permanent employees you saw were like a handful of rangers who lived in the housing over at Tower Junction or something. And then of course Mammoth. Mammoth is where all the permanent employees pretty much are, but it kind of turns into a ghost town once the peak season's over.
Got it. What are some of your best memories or something that comes to mind from spending time in Yellowstone?
Well, there's a lot. Some of my best memories were definitely at Old Faithful. I'd be there with my parents and my brother, and my parents had some friends who had moved here from Washington, and they were working in the park as well, and so they had their kids too. And so some of my best memories were like running around the boardwalk at Old Faithful with all of them, eating an ice cream, getting it all over myself. I remember one time there was this really cool beetle I saw on the ground, and of course, since I was a stupid little kid, little boy, I was like, how cool would it be if I stomped on this beetle? And I remember my mom dragging me by the back of my shirt because she was like, hey, we're in Yellowstone, you can't be stomping on the bugs and stuff in front of people. So, that's not necessarily a good memory, but it's one that stuck with me.
Sure,
and after that, I was like, oh man, I got to respect all the wildlife, even the ugly little beetle.
Yeah.
But and then in my teenage years, I had some really good memories in the park where my mom was at work, and so I was alone, and didn't have any access to internet and hardly any cell service either. And that was kind of a change for me because in my high school years, I was someone who like get home from school and get on the Xbox and game until bedtime, And so when I was out there with no access to internet or anything, I was like, what do I do? And I would just start walking around.
How old were you at this point?
15.
Okay. Yeah.
15, 16.
Yeah.
And I would just start walking around. Totally, no water, no food. No, my hiking boots were like the soles were falling out, and I would just like start walking up hills and stuff. Ran into some some old exiled bisons, some old bulls that aren't with the herd anymore. And that's a cool experience when you come across one of those. Kind of scary, but definitely cool. Saw a lot of wildlife, saw grizzly bears off in the distance, a couple black bears. Saw some weasels, which is something a lot of people don't get to see in Yellowstone. Those are pretty elusive. A lot of my best experiences were just wandering the park alone, just kind of like with my thoughts, and just taking in the beauty of the park and being grateful that I got to live there, especially during the slow season. I just felt like I had the whole park to myself, and it was definitely a great feeling.
Yeah, that's cool.
You said brother. You grew up with a brother?
Yeah, I've got an older brother.
Okay.
He's a year and a half older than me.
He was around a lot with you when you were in the park?
When we were children, yeah. But
okay.
In my teenage years, he was staying here in town, mainly because someone needed to like watch the dog and stuff.
Oh, okay.
But my mom was still taking me to Yellowstone at that point because I was getting in trouble, And she was like, "Well, you probably won't be getting in trouble if you're out here in Yellowstone with no access to the internet or friends or anything." So, fair point. But yeah, so my brother got to stay here while I was out there, kind of basically grounded, I guess.
Right on. And you said they're not working in the park now at all, or no?
Well, my mom still works for the Park Service, but I think she's working in a different park now. I think it's called Grant Coors or something. It's out by Deer Lodge. It's kind of like a little ranch. They got horses and cows and stuff. So nothing compared to Yellowstone, but she still does work for the Park Service.
Okay.
Nice. Grant Coors. I've heard of that, but I don't know exactly where that's at.
Yeah, see, I've heard the name a couple times, but no idea where it's at exactly. No idea what it really is, other than the fact that they've got a barn with some horses and stuff.
Got it. So you're kind of staying at the childhood. Like, what did you kind of do? You said you kind of gotten into trouble. I guess we can jump into that if you want to. And I'm curious about what kind of trouble are we talking? Ditching school or whatever. But more so, I'm trying to figure out what kind of a kid were you? What did you play sports? Did you? You said you kind of gamed.
Well, so I didn't really play sports in school. Well, a funny story though. In 6th grade, I did sign up for basketball, and on the first day of basketball practice, I came to school, and oh man. See, risky telling this story, but I think people will think it's funny.
I already think it's funny. You haven't even told it.
I came to school with some weed in my backpack, and I know as a 6th grader that sounds crazy, but it feels like people are getting into this younger and younger. But I walk into school, someone reports me like, "This kid smells like weed," and I get pulled into the principal's office, and of course they go through my stuff and. So I did not get to play basketball in 6th grade, since on the day of practice I got suspended for quite a while because I brought weed to school. It was definitely a knucklehead decision on my part, but I think if that hadn't have happened, I probably would have been into sports. But I didn't really do any extracurriculars in school or anything. I was interested in speech and debate, but I never got into it simply because I was like, I don't fit in with that crowd of people. Mm-hmm. It's like that group of kids sees me as like a loser, And I was like,
who did, or who did you perceive that? Like which group?
Well, just the speech and debate crowd, is kind of the more. I feel like those kids come from a kind of more affluent family, and they're more serious about their education. They probably already had long-term plans about going to college and stuff. So, a lot of them just, they were up on their high horse. I think they even looked down on the sports kids. These speech and debate kids look at the football players like, oh, stupid jock.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I never got into speech and debate because I simply just felt like I didn't fit in with that crowd. But kind of a bummer, though. I wish I would have. I think I would have been a good fit in that space. But my issues in school were mainly like I didn't want to go to class, and it was because I struggled in class. At a young age, I was diagnosed with a few, I guess you could call them like cognitive impairments, I suppose. Something called slow processing speed, which a lot of people aren't familiar with. It just kind of means that like my brain takes longer to process the information I'm being fed. And, and a lot of people think in lines. It's like a lot of people think in a way, it's like building a brick wall, one brick at a time. I feel like the way I think is more like a spider web. And that doesn't really translate well into the classroom. That requires linear thinking and stuff. So it's like class was super stressful for me. And I was like, well, I'm just not going to go. And especially in high school, the way Bozeman High School was set up, I mean, you could walk in and out the door at any time of the day and nobody would stop you, especially with the off-campus lunch. I'd leave the school and go like look at junket pawn shops and stuff, and then come back to school for a couple classes, and then leave again and hang out on the corner by Wendy's and kick the hacky sack around with everyone else who wasn't going to class.
You're like 25 yards away from school.
Oh yeah, exactly. And it's kind of hilarious thinking back how like the school just kind of enabled that behavior. They didn't really. It's like they made no effort to keep people, at least people like me, inside the school. I mean, they watch me walk, and they've got security cameras everywhere. And the attendance office has got a big TV screen where they can see everything. So it's like I know damn well they saw me walking out, and they didn't ever bother trying to get me to come back.
Do you think they should have?
Well, I feel like they should have put some effort in, but I don't want to put all the blame on them. I certainly got to take responsibility for my own actions. And they fixed that issue. I was at the school a few months ago just because I wanted to check it out after all the renovations they did and maybe say hi to a couple of teachers. But I mean, now all the doors are locked, and the front door to go in or out, you have to walk through the main office. And so I think they've totally solved the issue of students just leaving campus. But
I bet they probably also done that because of the whole like shootings across the country.
Yeah.
Because I think it was like a two-way street of like, well, students could probably get off campus easily, but also people could get on campus easily.
Right.
Which I guess, unless you're saying all the doors are locked now from the outside.
Yep, like all the side doors are.
I guess that's probably a good thing.
I think they were always supposed to be locked, but I think now there's some kind of mechanism that makes sure the door shuts all the way and is locked. There's a million stickers that say like, "Do not prop open the door," and all of that, and then the main office deal where you got to walk through the office to get in or out of the front entrance. But like you said, I think it's definitely a safety thing for the school, and it also probably inadvertently solved people just leaving campus whenever.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, when I did a CAP mentorship program for quite a while, and same thing when you went to, because I did it at Chief Joseph for a few years, and then the other elementary school, and you check in, like there's two sets of doors. You go through one door and the office is there, and then you check in, and then they let you through the other door.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's a good system.
Yeah, and it's kind of the same thing when you go back out. Like,
right.
If you wanted to run out of there full speed, you could probably get out without someone stopping you, but then you'd be...
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it makes sense. So random people aren't just walking into the school.
Yeah. I had an open campus around high school, and I mean, there was like fences around the campus, but you could walk in and out. It was open at lunch. It was supposed to be only like seniors only that could go at lunch. And so it was interesting because I guess everybody knew everybody. So like they knew that if you weren't a senior, like that the teachers and the, I don't know, I guess they weren't really security guards, but they're kind of security guards. They drive around on golf carts and they would be like, "Hey man, you're not a senior. You're not supposed to be off for lunch." And so like there were people watching you, but you could definitely like get on and off campus. So there was, a handful of times junior year and probably sophomore year that I left for lunch and I thought it was so cool and that I was doing something bad. But anyway,
You're almost an adult by then, by the time you're a junior or senior or a legal adult.
yeah. What, so you said you brought some weed to school in sixth grade.
Right.
Like, did you just grow up around like marijuana, or are you smoking it like at a young age? Like, I guess and the reason I ask is like, I guess probably in sixth grade, I knew like some of my friends' parents smoked weed, but like my parents didn't. And I was like never around it or exposed to it except for like very rarely. But I think probably it was probably like, right in that age, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, when some kids would start getting in trouble for it. And so I guess I've never really thought about like, how does that work, I guess? So yeah, I'm just curious, like, were you just exposed to marijuana at a young age?
Luckily I wasn't exposed to it by my parents or anything. But there was a lot of kids in my neighborhood whose parents smoked weed, and even some kids whose parents went as far as to giving their kids weed, which looking back, that's crazy. But so there was like free weed circulating the neighborhood. And of course at that age, when you've got a friend who's like, oh man, like you want to try some pot? It's
sure.
Like, oh yeah. And, it was around that same year I got in trouble that I actually like was first introduced to it. And, it's just crazy to think that, kids that young even get exposed to it. And I think these days it's even more and more common for kids that young to be exposed to it. But, it was just kind of the perfect storm of some odd people living in my neighborhood, and so that stuff was circulating around, and our everyone's delinquent behaviors was feeding into everyone else's delinquent behaviors, and spirals into trying to smoke weed.
I mean,
in sixth grade.
I don't know. I think I have a different view on marijuana now. I definitely have a different view on it than I did 10 years ago, and definitely than I did 15 or 20 years ago. Damn, I'm getting old. But I could totally see how that could happen, right? Like you're in sixth grade, so you're what, like 14, 13? Sixth graders are like 13 years old, right? 12?
I think that might be closer, 12.
So let's say 12, right? It's not like you're making great decisions at 12 years old.
Exactly.
And so anyway, but also like I don't think kids should be using weed at that young.
It's just how they know any better.
How they know better. I guess what I'm also saying is like I have a really good friend of mine who, at like 17, 18, 19, he was smoking a lot of weed. I shouldn't say a lot of weed. He was smoking weed every once in a while. But the way he describes it is like, he got in trouble at that age, and that like stigma that he was a bad kid and he got in trouble, like stuck with him for like 15 years, and then it's interesting because society has changed so much on weed, right? Where it's now legal and so I just think it's an interesting topic that, there's a lot of gray area. And I think there's two things can be true at the same time. You're not necessarily a bad kid just because you got in trouble with weed. But at the same time, like, you're also maybe not making great decisions. I don't know. It's like two things can be true at the same time.
At 12.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. At 12 or even 18,
yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? Or 25.
Sure. Yeah.
So anyway, okay. Okay. So you didn't play basketball that season, and maybe that kind of pushed you away from sports in general.
Yeah. I think if I would have been able to play, I think I probably would have had. I probably would have played sports all the way through high school, and it probably would have been motivation to stay out of trouble because if you're getting in trouble, getting suspended and stuff, you don't get to play sports.
Mm-hmm.
So, a unfortunate turning point in my life, but I'm not bitter or upset about it. I think every turning point in life has its own benefits and its own downsides.
Yeah, you never know. Like sometimes all the things that seem like shortcomings lead you ultimately to where where you want to be or where's the best situation for you.
Exactly. And I try to look at it like the universe always just kind of has a way of making sure everything works out. The road getting there might really suck, but you'll get there. And it's like everything happens to a reason. All these things fall into place eventually. So definitely not upset about what I missed out on in school, but it could have definitely shaped a whole different story if I did do those things.
Yeah, I know I'll butcher it but my buddy says something like, "What if this was supposed to happen? What if this is supposed to happen for me right now to benefit me or to help me?" Anyway, something to that extent.
Right.
I'm
I get
butchering
it.
his quote, but I get what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we could keep focusing on what you did to get in trouble, but
No, yeah.
so you, yeah, I don't know where to jump from there. But ultimately, like you're running for mayor now. What sort of started that trajectory, and when did that
Yeah.
come to
So
fruition?
probably in 2016. So that was like freshman year of high school. I started following politics pretty closely on the national level. So I guess that was when Trump was running the first time. So I think everyone started tuning in then because it was like, what the hell's going on? But so I started following.
So you were like 15 years old then?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I was following pretty closely. And I guess I took an unusual interest in politics at that point. I had no plans or anything to run for office. It was more just like, this is interesting stuff to watch happen. But then, a few years ago, I started learning more about my grandfather's career. My grandfather, Ed O'Connor, he had a career in the FBI during the Reagan administration. And then he moved to Panama and started a travel agency. And I think I could disclose this now. It wasn't really a travel agency, it was perhaps some weird Cold War era operations going on disguised as a civilian travel agency. So, and then he met my grandma, Shirley O'Connor, and she was a protocol secretary for the governor in the Canal Zone in Panama. And then eventually they moved back to the mainland, and my grandfather became a regional commissioner for the INS, Immigration Naturalization Services, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he was tasked with investigating corruption over a 2,000-mile stretch of the southern border. It was like alleged that there was a law enforcement down at the border who were accepting bribes and kind of allowing human trafficking to happen across the border and drug smuggling and everything. But so when I started learning more about his career, I took more interest in actually getting involved in politics. But still at this point, I hadn't been looking at local politics in Bozeman. I mean, back then, I didn't know what the hell a city commission was. I didn't know what the hell a mayor did. But then early in 2024, in November 2024, I was elected as a precinct committeeman on the Gallatin County Republican Central Committee. I went into that because for a couple of reasons. I was interested to see how kind of the local politics worked. And I thought that the county level Republican Party would be far more tame than anything on the national level. And I kind of felt like that I could go in as someone who's young and not their usual demographic. I felt like I could give them some insight into how to appeal to younger people and, like what issues the younger generations actually care about. But what I found was actually perhaps a more extreme version than the Republican Party on the national level. And after 6 months, I resigned with a pretty bombastic letter that made them very angry. I pointed out some of the hypocrisies I saw and the gatekeeping and just the nastiness. And of course, now on Facebook, they publicly accuse me of being a paid infiltrator, like a liberal who pretended to be a Republican or something. So that was fun. But it was after that, around that same time, when I decided I wanted to take a shot at running for office here in Bozeman, and especially after we saw Joey Morrison, who at the time, what was he, like 26, 27 when he um, won the election for mayor here in Bozeman. And I was like, wow, like, so a young person does have a shot getting elected in local politics. And then so I decided that I would take my shot at it, even though I'm only 24. A lot of people think that, like, oh, there's no way you can be qualified at that age. But, I've done my homework. I'm now very well educated on some of the issues going on in the city and how our city government works and everything.
Cool. What, like that? I think I find it very interesting that anybody who wants to kind of run for politics, much less, like mayor, what's the drive? Why do you want to do this? What drives you to do this?
So, of course, the big issues in Bozeman right now is the cost of housing and just the cost of living in general. And the mayor, so a lot of people don't know this, but the mayor in Bozeman, the way our government is set up, the mayor is essentially just another vote on the commission. But the mayor has the unique capacity to kind of be like a megaphone for the people in Bozeman, and to kind of use the position to set the agenda for the commission. And so the drive for me was to kind of just be the voice of all the people in Bozeman, the working class people, the blue collar people, the people who've lived here for their entire lives, who are getting pushed out by a lot of these transplants moving here. People getting pushed out by the cost of housing. And so the motivation is just to elevate the voice of all the people who go unheard and go ignored by the city. And I've got some, I guess, unique ideas for policy and how to tackle some of the affordability issues here in Bozeman. And I've just felt like mayor was the position to make those things happen. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that just even that topic alone is like super complicated.
Right.
There's a lot of factors that quite frankly, I think are out of really in a sense, like out of everybody's control, and so I guess I think people are feeling, I mean, pretty much everybody I think is feeling the cost of living going up, I personally don't think that that's a Bozeman issue. I think that's a United States of America issue. Mm-hmm. And so like that, I guess when and so I think, I don't know how to solve that. I think economists are having a hard time solving that. Because I think the market, right, the financial markets across the United States and really across the globe, are kind of pushing that to happen. Mm-hmm. And so I guess for that particular topic, like what would you do, or what kind of ideas do you have to make tangible change?
Right. So of course, cost of living covers a lot of stuff, and it's complicated. And when it comes to things like food prices and stuff like that, there's not much the city can do. But on housing, there's a couple incentives the city can offer developers to basically make a deal to get some below market rate housing. And the one I've really been focused on is tax increment financing. That's typically something cities use to kind of spark development in underdeveloped areas or undesirable areas of the city. But I've been looking at it as a way to make deals with developers to get below market rate units. And so a lot of people have no idea what tax increment financing is. I didn't know what it was 4 months ago.
Okay.
And basically the city creates a district on a map, and within that district, the base property tax value is frozen. And And then when a developer builds something in that TIF district, the value goes up. And then so the difference between the frozen value and the new value after development is the increment, and the city captures that increment, and it kind of goes into a special wallet so the special wallet doesn't go into the general fund. It doesn't go to schools or roads or anything. It's solely used to reimburse developers for eligible infrastructure costs. And so like recently, back in December, the commission voted yes to allocate $3.6 million in tax funding to a condo development. And in exchange, the city got 2 for sale units priced at 120% AMI. And at that price, if you wanted to comfortably afford those units, you have to be making about $91,000 a year. Of course, most people in Bozeman don't make $90,000 a year. So the way I see the city using it lately, it's a kind of a corporate handout, corporate welfare. I think we can change it and tie TIF to affordability benchmarks. Like if you want to build in the TIF district and you want $3.6 million in reimbursements, then you need to price 10 or 15% of units at 60 to 80% AMI for 20 years. And perhaps have like annual audits to make sure they stay in compliance, because they might just jack the prices up after they got reimbursed or something, and some kind of clawback mechanism, so if the developer does fall out of compliance, the city can get that money back. But of course, there's a lot of other tools that you can use to the same effect, but that's the one I've been focused on the most, because public dollars should have public benefit, in my opinion.
Yeah, so let's dive into this a little bit more, because I don't I guess understand enough to kind of how that works. Where do the dollars come from? That, like, let's just say you're using this example of there was the money was taken out of this fund, 3.6 million.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that 3.6 million come from?
The 3.6 million comes only from tax property value in TIF districts. And so like a developer builds in a TIF district, and the increase in property value is what's taxed and captured by the city. And so none of this money comes from the levies or any of the other taxes people paid. It all comes from property taxes only in these TIF districts.
Okay, got it. So it's tax dollars. It gets set aside for future developments.
Right, and
Okay.
with the purpose of reimbursing developers for like public facing infrastructure. Like they don't reimburse a developer for the cost of materials or anything, but it's more like the developer had to upgrade the sewer lines over here, or upgrade the sidewalk and add street lighting or parking. It's all the kind of publicly accessible infrastructure that they get reimbursed for.
Okay. Now I understand, and that makes a lot of sense. So I think there's a couple different ways to look at this in my mind, and I'm curious about how it works in Bozeman, and maybe it works both ways. I'm familiar with where you want to build an apartment complex, and that's going to have 500 people live there, right, in the apartment complex. That means there's going to be 500 more cars in that area.
Yep.
So they do a traffic study and they say, hey, we need to widen the lane here. We need to put a new turn signal, and we need to bring a new, larger sewer main to the building. And so what I'm familiar with is the project gets approved, and part of the project the city would pay for out of a fund similar to that. The city would do the work. And so they would put the street light in, add the new lane, and bring the sewer main in, right? Because those are city services.
Right.
So instead of part of the development being approved is also approving that those funds are used and paid for by the tax dollars to, I guess, complete that development in a complete fashion, meaning the developer is responsible for everything, quote unquote, on site, right? And the off site stuff, which is the street lights and the sewer, would be handled by the city. So that's one way of like doing it. It sounds like the way Bozeman does it in that situation is they basically approve the funding in a sense. I don't know if they give it to the developer, but the money gets charged to that account. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, and so it is a reimbursement. So the developer does pay for these costs up front, and then when they reach certain milestones, like let's say the final story of the building gets built, a portion of that money is now given to the developer.
Okay.
The units go on the market, some more of that money goes to the developer. Okay. When the units fill up, they get the rest of that money. So even though it's a reimbursement, at the end of the day, it's kind of no different than if the city paid for it all up front. And I don't know what all infrastructure costs are eligible, but I know in the example I brought up about the condo development, there's some old like clay water lines or something over there.
Yeah, clay pipe.
And
it's just clay pipe, but was used a long time ago, and
right,
they don't use it anymore.
And so the developer's going to be replacing those with modern pipes and stuff, and so that's something that gets reimbursed. And any sidewalks around the area, maybe the developer's going to put some green space in, like a little park or something, that probably be covered. So there's a whole lot of things it can cover. And to find out the specifics on each project, you got to crawl through a 50-page PDF and read all kinds of technical jargon. But
yeah. So I guess what would you change about that? Like, what's not good about the way it works currently?
Well, it's just that there's no deal making. Like, if we're going to reimburse developers who are building condos or apartment buildings, we should require that 15% of units are priced between 60 and 80% AMI for 20 years.
What's AMI mean?
It's the average median income. Those numbers come from HUD. And so, like with the 120% AMI example, that's to avoid spending more than 1/3 of your monthly income on rent, you'd have to be making $91,000 a year. And 60 AMI is the lower end. I think that's probably like $45,000 a year, perhaps. So the 60 to 80% AMI range, that's more realistic for like the working class people in Bozeman.
Okay.
And there's a lot of housing that is 120% AMI or 100% AMI, but there's not.
You mean that's what they're being rented at?
Right. Correct.
Okay.
And so there's not even a housing shortage in Bozeman. There's just like a affordable housing shortage. And when people talk about all these new apartments that have gone up that are vacant, I think there's like allegedly a 15 or 20% vacancy rate in these new apartments in Bozeman. And it's like, it's not because everybody's housed, it's because no one can afford those.
Yeah, I think that it's probably more like 12% right now. And one of the people who really track this really well in town is Sterling Commercial Real Estate. They like track it all really manually, and they put a report out. They have live numbers all the time. Anyway, that's really good information. Like Ryan over there at Sterling Commercial Real Estate tracks all that stuff like a hawk. However, I guess going back to this example, like what I'm trying to figure out is like the city owns the streets, then they maintain the streets, and they own the sewer.
Right.
And so they maintain the sewer and the street lights and whatnot. And so like, are you suggesting that the developers don't get reimbursed for those costs? Or are you saying that if they're going to get reimbursed for those costs, they should have to agree to certain amount of apartments, as an example, below market rate?
So I just think that, so whatever infrastructure developer would be responsible for, regardless of whether they're getting reimbursed or not, if it's their responsibility to upgrade these clay pipes, regardless of whether they're being reimbursed, and we are going to reimburse them, then there should be some kind of benefit for the city other than those being upgraded, because the developer would have had to do that regardless of reimbursement.
Yeah, but not really, because the because like it's the city's responsibility to upgrade these things. It's their infrastructure,
Well,
and they own it and maintain it.
the developer is responsible for any infrastructure that is like directly tied to their development. The city owns the public right of ways, the sidewalks and stuff. And I'm not entirely sure where the line is drawn between what the city is responsible for and what the developer is responsible for. But
It would be on the property line.
right.
So like the property line would be like the line of demarcation.
Right. And also in this example that I'm bringing up, the developer is going to knock down an old warehouse that's nearby. They want to do that regardless of whether they're being reimbursed because it's an old ugly warehouse, and they don't want that next to their luxury condo development.
Mm-hmm.
So my point is, if the developer wants to knock down that warehouse, regardless of whether they're reimbursed or not, why is the city not asking for deeper public benefit when it comes to reimbursing them for that cost? So the way they approve this kind of stuff is there's something called a but-for test, where a developer basically has to pencil out why this project would not be feasible without the funding. But a lot of times what you see is the developers basically just say like, well, the profit margin isn't what we would have wanted if we have to spend another $3.5 million on these costs.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, to me, that doesn't justify or quantify being unfeasible. They want to break even sooner, and they do it off off taxpayer money. And there's certainly some deeper affordability, I think, that could be extracted from these deals. And the way the city looks at it is they're like, well, it is public benefit to knock down an old ugly warehouse or to have these clay pipes replaced. And so, yeah, it's a public benefit to the people who are going to move into this condo development, but it doesn't really benefit anyone who's looking for housing right now, or anyone who doesn't live in that area. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I guess where I think, I think what you're saying is a little more. It's more idealistic than it is reality, right? Because, we're talking about private developers, right? They're not going to. It's not a charity business, right? And so, like, in order for them to break even or make money, right, which is the purpose of them, doing a development,
right?
They're not going to say, okay, I'm gonna lose money for the next 5 years because the city wants me to, and so I'm going to still do this development and lose money for 5 years, right? And so they're going to say, nope, I'm not going to build it, right? And so maybe we say, okay, that's fine. We don't then if you don't want to build it because we have different circumstances, then they're not going to build it, right? And so I think one of the things that I think there's this conversation about like affordable housing, jobs, like what kind of jobs do we want to have, right? Like one of the things that I don't think people realize is like, the taxes that are paid on that development, right? So like they buy all those materials, that those materials are taxed.
Right.
And so there's a tax on $50 million that developer pays. So they're paying that tax. There's hundreds of employees that build the building
Mm-hmm.
that get employee tax, right? Employment tax. The developer's paying that tax, right? And so like their developers are paying taxes throughout the whole project, right? Not only during construction, and then they own the building and they're paying property tax every year, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that's, part of the story as well. And I think you're right. Like, I think there's probably scenarios where like developers should be paying more and or getting reimbursed less, right? Mm-hmm. So I think there's a place to strike a balance there. I don't know where that balance is, and you're not going to get it right on every single development, right? There's going to be some developments that you know, almost like you almost have to like look back 5 years later and kind of do a post-mortem and be like, hey,
Yeah.
like how did we end up? Like, was this a fair deal for both sides? But I think so. Anyway, I think there's compromise in that, um, um, and yeah, I think and the affordable housing conversation is a really, really difficult one because like I don't know what affordable means. Affordable for who? You know, like
Right.
affordable. Honestly, like affordable for who? Like, you know, like
I think it's based on median income, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Like,
So
yeah,
that like that's like you look at what median income is, and then you say, okay, what is affordable based on
it,
median
like
income?
basically the simplest way to put it is if you're renting an apartment or something
yeah.
and you're spending more than 1/3 of your monthly income on rent, then that classifies as not affordable, basically.
Okay. Well, then, so I'm 38 years old, right? If you look at statistics over the last 40 years, there's been no affordable housing in the country. And what do I mean by that is like, well, if you look at how much people make versus how much their mortgage is or how much their rent is, like since I've gotten out of college, it's not, it's basically been unaffordable. And so anyway, like it's a problem that I think is not just um, one in Bozeman.
Right. It's absolutely not just in Bozeman. And I just wanted to circle back to one thing real quick. So when it comes to the tax increment financing and using it as an incentive, that's the thing. It's a incentive. A developer does not have to build in a TIF district if they don't want to. If they don't want to provide below market rate units in exchange for reimbursements, they don't have to build there. They could build in anywhere else in Bozeman. Could
Have you talked to any developers or contractors about this?
so
Like Langless or, you know, talk to the top 3-4 developers in Bozeman about this issue?
I haven't talked to any developers yet, but just the other day I met with the director of economic development here in Bozeman, and I asked him. I said, "Is it feasible to expand the way we use TIF and tie it to some more deeper affordability benchmarks?" And his answer was basically yes, but it has to be paired with tax credits from the state. And I guess that's kind of what they do already. These kind of go hand in hand. I'm not super familiar with how these tax credits from the state work. After I met with this guy, it's on my to do list to dig into.
I guess what I'm saying is like, I don't know enough about this topic either. So in order to learn specifically what you're talking about is like, I'd go talk to the, 2-3 biggest developers in the area that are doing multifamily homes and go talk to the biggest contractors in town and figure out how they think about this. Because I think one of the things that my biggest heartache with the conversation about housing affordability, and I'll just say this is a true statement all over the country. I work in construction, I work in development. That's my background. Is that like we don't have enough construction workers to build things at an economical price.
Right.
And so if you look at construction costs have almost tripled in the last 7 years across the country. And so if you look at that and you're like, I could build that apartment complex 7 years ago for this. Well, now it's 3 times the amount of, 2.5 times the amount of money. And so, for them, they're not going to do the job at a loss, right? And so these things keep getting more and more and more expensive, and that's because we have less and less people working in the trades. So like these things are like out of even these developers' hands and out of their control. Developers or contractors, like I'm working on a project right now that's a 3-year project, right? So take 3 years and let's say it's $100 million project. Okay. Inflation goes up 7% in a year on construction costs. That's $7 million that I just lost out of my budget.
Right.
Next year it'll be 14, and the year after it'll be $21 million. So in 3 years, I'll have lost $21 million to inflation.
Right. And, I like that you bring this point up. Because I'll admit I overlooked talking to developers, and honestly, maybe that should have been the first people I was talking to, because they're the ones looking at these numbers every day. I'd been focused on meeting with elected officials and department heads around here. That's gonna go on my to-do list.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
man.
reach out to some of these developers.
You're gonna learn a lot. If I talk to him, I'd learn a ton.
Right.
Like go talk to Andy Holleran and like ask him questions. He's been doing big projects all over Bozeman for 10 years.
Yeah, great point. I'm certainly going to reach out to some of these, probably the top 3 developers in Bozeman to hear their side of the story, basically.
Yeah, and go talk to Langless Construction. They're one of the biggest construction companies in the valley. It's a super complicated issue, and so I think I'll say this: anybody who thinks they can solve it, I think they're absolutely out of their mind.
Right.
I think that's a terrible attitude.
Well, because I think there's factors that are outside of your control. Like I'll give you one right now. Last 72 hours ago, there was a Trump tax put on copper. It was a tariff put on copper, right? Where do we get copper? From all over the world, right? And so now when you order electrical wire for your development, it just went up 50%. So one of your biggest budgets on your project just went up 50%. And so okay, I started a project here. Now, a tariff came in and I have 2 more years of ordering electrical wire, but I need to order all that wire in the next 6 months. And now I have to pay 50% more. Right. So, and by the way, the city's dealing with this too.
Right.
Let's say you become the mayor. You guys have a facilities department that does stuff all over the valley or all of the city. You guys order material. You guys have a budget. Well, part of your budget just got busted.
Right. Yeah. The federal government, especially lately, certainly is throwing a wrench in things, and the state government as well. The city government is at the mercy of both the state and the feds when it comes to what they can do to alleviate some of these issues. And certainly with tariffs on certain materials, I mean, that trickles all the way down to the people building developments here in Bozeman, and it affects the city's budget as well, because they have to use those same materials also. It's like a lot of people seem to forget that the city government doesn't just pull money and material out of thin air. It doesn't coalesce from the ether. They have to supply themselves the same way a private business would, essentially. But so those will be important. It'll be important to look at changes the state and the feds have made that impact the way Bozeman can tackle some of these issues.
Yeah.
I know we got a little off track, but can I repeat back to you what you were initially proposing, just to try to clarify that I understand
go
it?
ahead.
So what are these districts that you're speaking of that they?
So they're
TIF.
Okay,
so essentially what you're suggesting or proposing is they're going to build in this TIF district, and the city is going to pay a certain amount to upgrade or improve infrastructure. And that's essentially what the city has to leverage or bargain with. And You're saying, why don't they say to this developer, hey, we're going to pay for this much infrastructure for this new, if you will agree that this many units can be put at this price, 15% or whatever you suggested for this long, to help with affordable housing. And then we're going to give you this much money to upgrade the infrastructure. And that's essentially what you're suggesting.
Yep. That's what I'm suggesting. And the city's done that to some extent. But I guess
one of the points I want to clarify is that it is normal, and it happens in every city, county, state, is that because the city ultimately owns and maintains the city infrastructure, those dollars have to come from the city's budget. and they have to approve it. And so those kind of go hand in hand. Like if the development gets approved, then this money would get allocated to match those services. Otherwise you'd have actually what happens in like third world countries is you have a building get built and there's no road to it. There's no electricity to it.
Mhm.
There's no street light to serve that. Right. And so like you have to have the two, I mean, this is just like smart, good, first world development. Is it like, it's like, cool, we're going to agree to build this building. We're also going to bring all the government owned, infrastructure and facilities to it so that it can actually be a complete whole development. Right.
But this TIF district is a little bit different case than just any area. Is that correct?
It is, just in the sense that so the city draws this district out on a map, and so when the developer is being reimbursed for any infrastructure that falls under what they own. The developer buys a piece of property, so it's the sewer lines within their property line that they're upgrading and requesting to be reimbursed for.
No, it's the sewer lines offsite. So like,
are you sure that this TIF district is the same as every district that you're speaking on? Because it just sounds like this is different from what he's saying.
I don't, but I've never heard of the city paying for sewer lines underneath a building that somebody else owns.
Yeah,
but that's part of the incentive. The city is saying.
I think you're confused. I think the sewer lines are the ones that the city is upgrading to bring it to this new development.
I wish I had the whole documents here, but in this example I'm bringing up, the developer, they're building this condo development. There's clay sewer lines. There's a warehouse they want to get rid of. There's some dilapidated sidewalks, and this is stuff within the property they bought. Like that warehouse. If the city's not reimbursing them, the developer they still want it knocked down because they don't want it there. So the city's under no obligation to pay to have that warehouse removed because it's not city owned.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying, and that's why it's a incentive, and that's why TIF is used in the first place, because a lot of developers, they'd be like, well, I don't want to build next to the ugly warehouse because I don't want to pay to demolish it and get rid of it. And so the city says, well, hey, we would love for you to build there because we want development over there, so we'll reimburse you for the eligible cost.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think you're trying to say. And there's it sounds like there's still some variables that we don't know, but because they can take this extra funding that they're going to get from the city, that way they could therefore look at their budget and be like, hey, well, if the city is going to give us that much, we can make these tweaks in the price for some of these. This will benefit the city and help their affordable housing issues. We'll still be profitable because we're getting this extra funding from the city. In theory, I think that's what it's to this situation. If it's just, like your standard lot or, in an industry that you're in or the specific situations, I think that's, if I'm getting what you're saying, right, this is the idea you're suggesting or implying. It sounds like there's some variables, but it sounds like the city gives out extra tax dollars because this is a less desirable place to build, and that funding can go towards this, and the city can use that to leverage what they have, essentially, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just trying to get it clear in my head, because I know we were jumping all over the place with it.
There's certainly a lot of variables when it comes to these deals that are made, and I'm not a developer, so I don't know every little detail that goes into developing something and all the work that goes around the infrastructure. Looks like we got something.
I'm just drawing a picture, so like this is the building, right?
Right.
Kyle, I don't know if he does, but I completely get what you're saying. I just think this is a different situation that he's speaking of. Like, I totally get what you're saying. Like, the city's responsible. Outside of that, why wouldn't they be? That's not owned by the developer.
Yeah,
and they pay for that, and they need to.
And it might be, and that's something that you should check out. What I'm getting at is like, this is the developer's property line, right? Like all the way up to the street,
right?
So this is sewer line. This is a sanitary sewer line. Maybe this is storm drain, sanitary sewer, right? So like the city owns everything from here this way. Those are their pipes.
Right.
This is a developer's pipe. This is a developer, but once it goes off their property line, this is the city's, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm familiar with is I'm a developer. I want to build on this piece of land.
Mm-hmm.
And to bring these sewer lines and maybe even upgrade them because they're in the street. These sewer lines are 8 inches and they're old. They're 50 years old, right? If I'm going to build this, my development needs a 12-inch sewer line and needs to be brand new,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if you're going to rip out the old, there's a new line. It's going to be, 1,000 linear feet, right? And it's going to be a new line. So that's the city's responsibility if they agree to this development. But part of that would be to agree that the city spends $3 million to do that out of the city's budget, right? So I got $100 million here. Check that box. I'm willing to spend that much money. The city's willing to spend $3 million to bring to do this work,
right,
to make this development a whole, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just like common practice, and the city does benefit, and the taxpayers benefit from upgrading these lines, right? Because now they've upgraded all this infrastructure, and it allows the development down the street to actually build another piece of development, right? And it's like, hey, we already replaced these lines, and we can serve this building now for a lot less money because this work is only worth $500,000, right? And so it's like, great. Now this other development, this is kind of this economic piece is like, well, actually, this development promotes the next one and the next one and the next one. It makes it actually more cheaper and more efficient because all this infrastructure is brand new, right? What I think, so it's important to figure out, like, are the sanitary lines that are on this site,
Mm-hmm.
are those being paid by the developer or are they being paid by the city, right? So that's the question that we were talking about. Is this TIF district difference or different? Because normally the city only pays for stuff offsite. Anyway, and so you can kind of see how complicated this can get. One of the things I think that I don't have all the information on this. I used to work at Amazon, and I worked in their construction management department for building their warehouses all over the country. And so we'd build these really, really large warehouses. I'm talking millions of square feet.
Right.
So these were $200-300 million projects. And you can imagine that, like, those big warehouses have a lot of employees. And so they have a big impact from a traffic standpoint. Mm-hmm. And also, like, that amount of employees has a big impact from, like, sewer lines and right. Water lines and stuff like that, which are city owned. And so we had a really large budget for all the infrastructure that we had to pay for. And we did an agreement with the city where we would set aside funding to do the project. And we would set it aside in a joint escrow account with the city. And so then the city would put their funding in, and it would be put in an escrow account. And what they were doing was, the building was going to get built in 2020, call it, right?
Okay.
But they did a traffic study for these road expansions and all this sewer and stuff. So the stuff didn't need to get updated in 2020. But as that area grew, according to, like, the economic development plan and the traffic study, there'd be more and more and more traffic there. They said, look, by 2021, we need to put a street light down here, down the street.
Right.
And by 2022, we're going to have to put another street light down the street. And by 2023, they have to put another street light over here, right? And sewer and water and whatever. So there was a forecasted plan to pay for all that. And so all that money was in a joint escrow account. And so it was up to the city to say when they wanted to spend that money, right? Was
Right.
it 2021, 2022, 2023? But the money was going to be set aside jointly. So that, like, I guess that's just like, I think how that functioned. One of the things that people don't think about is that Amazon building shipped 1 million packages a day, and the city of Nampa, Idaho got paid through tax dollars.
Right.
Call it, let's just say every package was worth $10. Well, they got, I don't know, $1 on every package. So the city of Nampa made $1 million a day off of Amazon, free and clear.
Right.
And what the city of Nampa did was they took that tax dollars and they dispersed it across their budget to maintain the city and develop the city and pay their bills, right? And so I think there's a whole other conversation that I think people aren't talking about is like, these developments aren't just for rich, greedy assholes. These developments are paying for the city to develop and prosper.
Right.
And they're doing it through tax dollars. And they're doing it through like running a business.
Right.
And so I there are two sides of the story. I think we tend to hear only one side, which is these guys are greedy assholes and they're selling apartments and condos to people who are wealthy.
Yeah. And just one point I want to make on that is like, so that an Amazon warehouse, it serves a huge demographic of people,
Totally.
I mean, everybody uses Amazon, and there's a lot of people who get
there.
jobs at Amazon. But in like this condo development I'm talking about, I mean, they describe themselves as a luxury community.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's about like who is being served by the development. It's a very specific niche demographic of people who are going to benefit directly from this condo development. The city certainly benefits because they get tax money from this development that can be used down the line for whatever, but like a Amazon warehouse, I mean, that benefits the entire city directly because everybody orders from Amazon. Tons of people work at Amazon. Amazon pays a pretty decent wage for all of their different roles. And so it just the question just always comes down to, at least in my mind, who's directly benefiting from the particular development. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have any condo developments for people with more money,
Mm-hmm.
but it needs to be balanced.
Yeah. I think it's a super complicated.
It's
super complicated issue.
Certainly complicated, and it's always difficult to.
I think
difficult to articulate it without having the stack of documents that have every detail.
Well, and that's very true too. Yeah, I think when you talk to some of these developers, you should just ask them like, hey, like what if you were to basically build a set of condos at like exact market rate, right? So meaning they would literally break even, which by the way, nobody would do that. You'd obviously want to like make some money, right?
Of course, yeah.
Because you've spent, some of these developments have taken 10 years, right? They bought the land 10 years ago and sat on it for 10 years. Anyway, they wouldn't necessarily break even, right? But let's just say they were going to just break even. Like, I don't even know that it's possible. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Because I think the construction costs are so high that I don't know that it's possible. But you should ask.
Who's in charge of like the city's budget and the way we allocate taxes and that kind of stuff?
Well, it's the city commission is responsible for the budget, and literally the city manager is the one who he oversees like the day-to-day stuff, like how much money is going to which department, But the way I understand it, the commission and the mayor essentially they create they pass the budget, and the city manager is responsible for making sure all the departments are funded.
How about
What's the size of the like? What's the city budget now annually?
It's about $200 million annually, I believe. Maybe it might be like, yeah, I think that's roughly about it. I think over the last year or so, it's changed quite a bit. It might be closer to 300 million.
Okay, got it.
I got an idea.
What's that?
What if you take, I don't know, take the top 3 developers. I'm sure they've got a CFO and people that do their budget for these projects, and then take whoever the CFO is for the city or whoever does this budget, and tell them to give them each other's budget and say, okay, you now run the city budget, allocate the taxes, make it profitable, and then, tell the city to do the same thing for the developers to budget, just so they can both look.
Oh, you mean just like as an exercise to be
Yeah.
like, hey, like what? Yeah,
Because
that's a really good point, man. Like,
and then they can
two
both
people in the same room and say, hey, like where do we bend and flex, and how does this, like, they're not going to do that, by the way, but
I'm just saying that it's really easy to say, like, let's get some of the developers to sit down and say, like, yeah, they're not going
to. Sorry, this is
okay. Well, look, the developer's not going to do stuff for free, and it's building a big apartment building is a multi-year project with a lot of people and very complex, and they should be paid well for that, as anyone would. And same thing with the guy, running the city's budget.
100%.
They should be paid well for what they're doing, but they also
they're running a freaking $300 million budget,
and they're trying to support the city. And they were, a lot of these people are elected officials because the city believes in what they're doing. But I think to see it from the other side, I don't know where you'd get at the end of that meeting or exercise, but I'd be interested to say, because as someone who owns a business, I know what it's like to look at my numbers and be like, hey, look, this is what I need to charge. This is what I want to make sure I pay my guys. I want to make sure they're paid well and taken care of. I want to make sure for the 80 hours a week that I'm working that I'm getting paid well, and I want to make sure I'm doing, fair business, because I got to be competitive in my market.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all true.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, like, and maybe this has occurred and I'm just unaware of it. And this would have to take a lot of vulnerability from both sides, and honesty, transparency, and vulnerability. And so I think there's some people that just wouldn't participate.
Right.
Like, by the way, like, thanks for talking about this, because like it's like this stuff's complicated and hard, and there's not a one size fits all answer, and what I'm suggesting is, this seems like such a big issue in the city. Like, we should have an open forum.
Well,
Let's get the top 3 developers on a stage with the mayor, with the city, whoever runs the budget, city manager, and get a couple of contractors on stage. Let's get maybe some real estate lawyers, land use attorneys on stage. Like, get the people who do this for a living on both sides, and just have an open conversation and ask real freaking vulnerable questions, because I think there's like just this disconnect of like not communicating, right? Of like, all these people think that like, hey, these people are just rich assholes that are trying to get richer. And like, I don't think that's the case. Like, I think some of these people that I've met, a few of them, I've had the pleasure of just having maybe 5 or 10 minutes with them. Man, they seem like really nice people.
Right.
And so I think that's interesting. I've also, talked to Cindy. I always pronounce her name incorrectly.
Andreas
Andreas. Yeah.
Former mayor.
Yeah. She's super nice too. And nice is nice. That's great. But like, also we need people who are effective, right? Like, it's a serious job that you're running for, is to like, you're going to run a $300 million budget, and you're going to be responsible for, a couple hundred employees, and like, so we need people that are effective. Right. And so, yeah, I mean, I just think that we should have some open dialogue about this conversation, because I think people are, somewhat beating around the bush and being idealistic and saying, well, stuff should just be cheaper. Like, yeah, man, I wish stuff was cheaper too.
Right.
Like, if you look at the costs in the last 5 years, it's not just cost of, like, in Bozeman, but like cost of groceries and
Yep.
a car, tires, like, stuff's expensive.
Oh yeah.
It's like, it doesn't matter how much money you make. It's caught up with everybody.
Yep. Everything down to buying food, and it's like housing's always the buzzword for this stuff. But I mean, everything. Just go get a haircut, new pair of shoes, groceries. Everything's more expensive, and the wages just haven't kept up. And of course, there's no magic fix for everything. There's only ways we can slightly alleviate some of the pressure. But all this stuff's very complicated, and we definitely need transparency and conversations from both sides, from the private sector and the public. I think it'd be interesting to see some kind of open forum with some of the top developers, as well as some of the people within the city, because it'd be interesting to compare their perspectives from both of those sides. Because I think oftentimes, like you were saying, the perspective from the private side, from the developers, is people are just like, well, these are just rich douches who want to get rich off the backs of the poor people, and I don't think it's as cut and dry as that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the cannery district, right. So if you look at the cannery district, those guys there. One of the guys' names is Scott. I forget the other gentleman's name. I've met both of them, separately. I don't know, maybe spent 30 minutes with them or so. They seem like really nice people, right? And they went on that's a really cool story, by the way. If you haven't heard that story of how they took the cannery district and redeveloped it, like, you should go meet Scott Dellendorf and let him tell you that story, and his business partner. It is an amazing story. Like, they bought the cannery, which was abandoned.
Right.
It was abandoned for years. It was an eyesore, and the city had been talking about tearing it down for a long time. And Scott and his partner, they weren't developers at the time. They had no development experience. And they were like, let's buy this piece of land and refurbish it and repurpose it and build it into what it is today. So they had this, like, really kind of fucking wild ass vision. And if you talk to them about their finances on it, like, they were way in the negative.
Right.
They were in the negative on this because it was a crazy idea. And so, I think if you talk to, they should tell you the story, but it's like, it's been a success story. And I think it's been a huge success story for them personally, financially, I would imagine. Mm-hmm. I would also say it's been a huge success story for the city. And it's really cool. Of, like, the cannery is super cool, Oh,
like, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff over
spot. There. So then there's the stories like that too, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, that's awesome. So anyway, it's a cool story. You should go hear it from those guys.
Well, it's certainly someone I'll reach out to. I'm trying to talk to a lot of people because I never admit that I know everything. I won't ever pretend I do. And so I really value the perspective from everybody involved in all of these decisions in the city.
Yeah.
Well, props to you, man, because I know Kai was saying these people would have to show a lot of vulnerability to sit down, but you sat down with us and you have no idea who we are, what we're going to ask, and you're answering what you know and sharing what you believe and admitting what you don't know at the same time, which is awesome. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You're not like, I know it all. I know how to solve this problem or whatever.
And that's what that's a big problem I see in politics on the local level and all the way up to the top is you see people run for office and they pretend they know everything. And it's like, no, you're a human just like the rest of us. There ain't no way that you know everything. You don't have the answers. Like, all of this stuff takes teams of people to think about and come up with solutions. And it's just it's sad to see a lot of these people who aren't willing to just admit when they don't know something. And it's like, I don't think the public is going to think less of someone running for office who says, I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm willing to look into it and learn about it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's complex. Even a city the size of Bozeman, the amount of people involved that live in this city and the amount of people coming from city employees to residents to developers to everyone in between to try to sit here as one person and say that you can comprehend all their perspectives and you have this solution that will fix it is just complete shit. Like you can try to collect as much information as you can and try to build the right team of like the right nuanced team of people from every opposing side and hopefully make the most intelligent decision. But politics are so complex. I don't follow them in depth, but every time I hear somebody kind of explain the downstream and the ripple effects of the smallest decisions, but you don't realize how many legs there are to a city and to a political system, like globally and nationally everywhere. Like there's the smallest or biggest ripple effects from the tiniest things, and it's really easy to get stuck in our one idea because we're pretty sure that that's going to solve our problem, but we're not thinking of the 99 problems it might create in the.
Exactly. I think it was 2 weeks ago, I did an interview with the Gallatin Valley Sentinel, and they asked me my thoughts on public safety. And I was like, well, crap, I don't know the current situation. And so I reached out to the fire department, and on Thursday I'll be meeting with the fire chief. I'm hoping to meet with the police chief too, because those are the people who can tell me whether or not their departments have enough funding and what the challenges are. That's the approach I think everyone should take. I'm really grateful too that these department heads have been so willing to meet with me. I was kind of nervous that they throw a wall up and not want to meet with me for a variety of reasons. But so looking forward to meeting with more people so I can have an actual educated opinion. A lot of people might just say like, I'm for public safety. Like, let's give the cops more money. I'm saying like, well, if the police chief can articulate whether or not they have enough funding and what the challenges are with, staffing or resources or whatever, then I can form a data-backed opinion and not just pick, defund the police or flood the streets.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's actually laws and regulations about all that, right? About how much funding they actually get, right? And there's probably not just like a choice, right? Yeah, I mean, that's a complicated one.
If we go just back to you, how does this whole process look from when you decided you wanted to run to like when's the next, like when would that election be for?
It's in November.
Okay.
And filing opened all the way back in April. And I've been making a lot of moves since pretty much the day I filed, but I think the public doesn't really start tuning into this stuff until probably end of August. And so things will be picking up pretty soon. But I mean, from April to now, it's really I've been meeting with elected officials and departments and combing through city documents on their website and stuff, and watching recordings of the commission meetings and stuff. I wish I could attend those in person, but since I work overnight, I'm not going to go. I can't go to City Hall at 6 p.m. and sit there for 6 hours and then go to work at 11 or midnight. I mean, that'd be crazy.
So you're working the night shift right now?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. at MSU.
Got it.
I've said this is just my opinion, which might be totally wrong too, but this is what I've said about politics for a while, is that I think everyone who's running, who wants to be elected for any position from the top all the way down, if they do their best to educate as many people as possible about why they're running and what they're, what and why. Because the biggest struggle I've had in voting in general is just having really no idea what this person stands for and what they're kind of why they're doing what they're doing. So I feel like I'm kind of just taking a guess, and I hate voting when I'm taking a guess. I'm like, I don't know. I'm like comparing biases I've had since I've like based on where I grew up and how I grew up, and I really don't know what this person's actually trying to do and why.
Right.
And the people that go on podcasts and spend time, going places, educating people, and having kind of in-depth conversations versus 5-minute talking points about like, well, like you said, oh, I want like more money for law enforcement, and I'm going to improve city safety, and that's why you should vote for me.
Right.
It's like that. Anyone could say that. Like
Mm-hmm.
anyone could a 2-minute script and say anything that sounds good. But if you sit down anywhere for a couple hours and days and months and weeks on end and explain how you're going to try to approach it and what you've been doing, and that you might not have all the answers, but you're hoping to team up with the people that do. And anyway, that's is a much more compelling case for me because I'm not someone who studies politics daily. So I don't have a background in politics to know, I don't know, half of the terminology and the jargon, just, I don't think the general public even understands.
Right.
And they're just kind of in the dark.
And I'm so glad you bring this up because that's been an issue I've had is like, it's almost like we need someone who can translate all the technical jargon in a way that just the voters can actually understand. Because there is nothing worse than going to the ballot box and looking at all the names and being like, well, like, I don't know, like this guy said he's for public safety, but like this guy also said he's for public safety, but it's like, you don't know the specifics, and I take great issue with people who run and just go on slogans like, let's give more money to the police, or like speed bumps are great. Let's just put speed bumps everywhere. And all the slogans, it's like, please explain to me like what you're going to do and how it's actually going to impact my life instead of just these vague, abstract messages. And I think it's really unfortunate that Bozeman doesn't do real debates with candidates for these city offices. They do forums where you get the question beforehand, so you can prepare your answer, and then after that, it opens up to public Q&A. But these people just they coast by on vague slogans. And I've actually been I'm trying to put together a debate between me, Douglas Fisher, and John Meyer, because I think it's important that the public gets a chance to see us all hold each other accountable, like head to head, no scripts, no questions in advance.
Tim and I would love to host it.
Really?
Sure.
We'll moderate.
That's what I'm looking for, because so I'll secure a private venue and handle inviting the press. And I've reached out to Montana Free Press. I've reached out to everyone, and I got so desperate I started emailing the high school speech and debate team. I was like, I need moderators, and nobody's interested. Not sure why, but nobody wants to do it. But it's like,
we could just do it at the pavilion at Bogert Park.
Right. Yeah, it could be
right? Like there's a stage there.
But do you need an audience if you're going to do it anyway, like in a closed room recorded, or do you think a bunch of people heckling and yelling like just kind of bastardizes the whole conversation? And I'm asking this as a question, not as a.
Yeah, I think we'll have to have discipline in the audience.
Yeah, but
right. Yeah,
you've listened.
Okay, so yeah, good point. So
you've listened to some of those city meetings, right?
Yeah, I have. So okay, yeah. We can get a venue.
Yeah.
How many people think it would be like?
I don't think
be in the crowd. 100.
I don't
even a good number.
I don't think that many people would show up.
You don't think 100 people would show up for the 3 candidates?
Nope, I don't. I think maybe.
So I'll say this: I would love to help you put this on. I'll donate my time. I'll donate some money. Tim and I will moderate it, or we can get somebody who's better than us. But I'm serious. Like, this is actually something I'd be interested in doing, because what's more valuable than hearing who the next 3 people are?
Right.
And so, first off, thanks for suggesting it. That would be awesome. Has it ever been done before?
Not as far as I know. So the Montana League, now I'm going to mix up their name. The League of Women Voters, that's what it is. They usually do all the forums, and the forums are just kind of silly. So you've got all the candidates for mayor and all the candidates for commission. So you end up with 10 freaking people. There's one question that gets asked, and everyone one at a time gets to get up with their prepared answer and, spend 2 minutes talking about it, and then maybe there's a short Q&A.
Yeah, so it's all fake.
It's all fake, and there's way too many people. I mean, also you don't get to, you can't confront your opponent. You don't get to make a rebuttal on anything or like counter anything. You know, in a debate.
Well, and I think
Go ahead.
I think it would be cool to be a conversation, not a debate. Like
Right.
a debate, the way like the presidential debates, those are also a joke, right?
Right. Yeah. No,
Because then people are just like, they're just kind of like picking on each other, and like it'd be like a conversation like we're having now, like which is we're having a debate on like the things that we don't understand.
Right.
But that's what we're debating, like on the real estate development stuff. It was like we're like talking through how it actually works, which we don't know.
Right. And perhaps debate's the wrong word because that makes it sound like an argument, you know? I think we were having opposing views on the development thing, but we're trying to understand both sides of it. It's a conversation. But I think it's important that the three mayoral candidates have a chance to have a conversation in front of everyone. And, of course it would be structured. Like you get, 2 minutes to make your point, and then maybe you can, you get a 30-second rebuttal or something. I don't know.
I mean, we could rent out a restaurant.
This is what I was thinking. So the Best Western on 7th has some really great rooms, and they've got audio visual setups and everything. Okay. And I mean, it's cheap. I mean, I rented a space there for a couple hours, and it was like $200.
Okay.
I mean, they even supplied ice water and everything.
Yeah, we did that. We went over there a couple times for the investor club. Not at the Best Western, or was it at the Best Western?
No, at the Spring Hill. We have our investor meetings there every week or every month.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah. All the hotels around here have.
Maybe that's not Spring Hill, but it's the hotel off of East Valley Center, kind of right next to the come on in.
But so I'm thinking a private venue like that, and I imagine probably, I don't know, 30, 50 people actually show up in person. But the most important thing is trying to get like the Daily Chronicle or some of the local news outlets there. Because if we could get televised, oh my goodness.
We could just record it ourselves and then put it on YouTube.
Right. It could be both. Getting it on YouTube would be awesome. But getting the actual press to televise it, it gives it some legitimacy, some of the older voters.
Does it?
It does. Yeah, I'm not trying to say you guys aren't legitimate, but
no, I meant like is the actual press legitimate? That was more of a joke, kind of.
I get you.
Yeah,
but it's I think that just the more visibility, the better. Older people don't really use YouTube.
When would you want to do it? Ideally,
I'm thinking
September.
Yeah, I like
late
my
September?
ideal plan. Well, I'm thinking more early or mid-September.
Okay,
I think is the perfect time, and whenever I do get everything locked in, I want to give John and Douglas enough time to prepare. I think 20 something days in advance is fair, and I guess the other question is whether
20 days would be totally fair.
Yeah,
if you can't figure out what the hell you have to say,
no, exactly,
in like 24 hours, I don't, why are you,
And I guess my worry is that. So I guess I probably haven't even said this. Douglas Fisher. So he's one of the other people running for mayor. He's currently a commissioner. And so the way I see it, it's beneficial for him to not debate anybody and to just coast on the fact of like, oh, well, I'm a sitting commissioner. I know what the issues are right now. Like I've been working on this stuff,
Is that how he talks?
A little bit. So I'm worried I'm worried he will decline a debate invite.
Okay,
but
we definitely have to not call it a debate.
A conversation invitation. He could decline, but he might not though, because then he'll have to explain to everyone why he won't have a conversation with the 24-year-old toilet scrubber janitor running for mayor.
Let's pick a date in September, and I'm not saying today. Like I honestly will help you set this up. I'll help pay for it. I'll help televise it. Like I think this would be awesome.
I think it could.
And it would be really. I think it'd be really good for the community to listen to what people have to say.
And I think it can make a big enough splash that it could change the way these elections are done in Bozeman after this. I mean, this could become a regular thing going forward instead of just these forums, you know. And I think that's like the most beneficial outcome.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, maybe it'll be like 3 hours long.
Yeah,
Sure,
Yeah, 3 hours long, because that's long enough, not too long, because you do have three people that have something to say, and we should like let them say what they have to say, and also, you know, go back and forth and develop their ideas live, right? That's
Right.
also, I think, what people don't realize is that like some of these ideas are getting developed in real time.
No, exactly. Like, I mean, when we were talking about the whole development thing, I mean, I hadn't even been thinking about the fact that like, it's like, where does the eligible infrastructure line drawn, you know? And it's like outside the private.
And that's because like, why would anybody know?
Yeah.
Right? Why would the layman know that, like, you know, they just like, oh, like we paid $3.5 million for this. And it's like, well, yeah, but not, I mean, you paid for something that the city always paying for. Like, you know, that's just how development works.
But yeah, like having these off the cuff conversations, it's really important for everyone to develop ideas and see the new perspectives and stuff. So yeah, it'd be great for me, Douglas, and John to be able to talk face to face in front of voters, and I think it would really help voters have a better understanding of who they're voting for come election day.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's keep talking about it and make this happen if it's
Yeah,
going to happen.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we'll
Like,
stay in touch and figure it out, because I'm determined to make it happen. And it sounds like you guys are excited to be involved in that, and
yeah,
which is great. I mean, and so that kind of tells me that I think the public has an appetite for an event like this. And
I also think like we like, you know, you pick a date, advertise it, like print out a bunch of flyers, put them all over the city, right?
Mm-hmm.
Put it, you know, you could make we could make a couple of videos, put them on the interwebs, and I don't know,
And also,
see how many people show up. But you could pre-sell tickets.
Mm-hmm.
And I say pre-sell, I'm like, I guess let's figure out where all the money should go. And I say money, like maybe it's free. I don't know. Maybe it's sold, but like donate all the money back.
I mean, so the way I imagined it is, I think it should be free for the public to attend.
Okay.
But it should be RSVP, you know, because obviously you can't have 200 people show up in a little event room at a hotel or something. And I really don't think it'd be too expensive to put on, because like these venues at the hotels, they're not that expensive. And, you know, I've got donations from voters, so it's not like I'm not flat broke or something. I have no problem securing a venue. And I mean, other than the venue, I really don't see where any more cost would.
well, just
how much money do you think it would cost?
I think just for the venue, $200, maybe $250 when you add the audio visual setup. I mean, that's been my experience. I've rented event spaces at the Best Western, and it wasn't too expensive.
And you got to take all this, either move all this equipment there to record, get everything set up, the time to move it, like, you know, my time, your time, everyone else's time that's helping us set up, make sure, assuming like tables and chairs and everything are included. And then you probably want some better video than our webcam.
I mean, it's probably a few $1,000.
Yeah, like tops.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, yeah, you guys would have a better understanding about it than I do. I obviously have no experience setting up anything like that. As far as I've gone, is I rented a venue at the Best Western. I showed up and I stood behind a podium, and one person showed up, and I talked at them for 30 minutes. But,
okay. Cool. That's a great idea. I like that idea.
Cool. Let's keep talking about it. Thanks for coming on here and talking with us, man.
Yeah, no problem.
I was going to say, don't use our interest as the gauge for public interest, because we set this up because we like sitting down and talking to people and getting to know them and finding out what's going on. But I do think there would be a reasonable amount of public interest, and I think having it recorded and on YouTube and on Spotify is when people can access it on their time, on their schedules, because people are busy. And,
Yeah, that's important.
So even if 50 people showed up, maybe thousands of people would have access to it and said, "Man, I'm getting these ballots in the mail, and oh, look, I can go here and actually see who the people are instead of just guessing or asking my neighbor."
Yeah, and I'll say this, and I would tell that to their face as well. If they're not willing to show up, they shouldn't run for mayor.
That's exactly how I feel.
Like if you can't sit in a room with your other people for several hours and just have a conversation, like what are you doing running for mayor? Like you're going to deal with so much more pressure and scrutiny and vulnerability and challenge being mayor day to day. If you can't sit down in a comfortable chair and talk, like you have zero business.
And I can't even emphasize enough that both John Meyer and Douglas Fisher should be more than capable of having a conversation with me. I mean, I'm a nobody compared to them. I mean, John Meyer is a lawyer. Douglas Fisher is a sitting commissioner with a long history of working in like nonprofit organizations and stuff. So, I mean, if they're uncomfortable talking to some 24-year-old kid, then they probably aren't fit to be seeking that office in the first place.
I would agree. Thanks for coming on, man. Really appreciate it. Good to meet you, and thanks for taking some time with us today.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll stay in touch so we can figure out this
let's do it.
Debate or whatever we're going to call it.
Cool.
Thanks, Brendan.